Welcome back to the Forge for another Rusty production. Today we're going to tap or die. So I'm in the middle of building my gas forge, and the next thing I've got to do is actually build the burner. So in order to do that though, there's a skill that I have never tried before, which is to actually tap a hole in the side of one of the gaskets so that I can actually put some other screws and some other parts into it. Now, I've never done that before. I don't have the tools. Well, I didn't have the tools until now. I've gone and bought myself a really cheap set of tap and die handles. And you can see there, I've got my, my die in there. And this is where I will put my tap. Now, I haven't done this before, so I'm just going to trial it. Make sure that I can do what I'm trying to do. So I've just got one, actually what is it? It's like a 10 mil stock. I'm gonna try and put a thread onto that, and then I'll hacksaw that off and then try to create some sort of hole, which I will then tap and see if I can screw my new screw into. So that's what I'm going to try and do. I don't know whether this is going to work or not, but let's give it a go and get started. So it's got a little bit of round stock there. I'm going to chamfer the edge of that just so it's a little bit easier to put the die onto, which should just speed the process up a little bit, but who knows. Everything's very temporary at the moment, so I mean this vise, while it's on there, it's moving around a fair bit. But that's just because I haven't got everything set up just yet, the new premises. And let's see, put it out there. Now again, these are just cheap, cheap handles in particular, and the reason I just keep getting cheap tools is because I tend to break tools. Now, question is that because they're cheap or because I don't know what I'm doing? I think it's I don't know what I'm doing. And the reason I say that is because what I've noticed lately is on things like this that have actually got handles or that require certain pressures, I can tell when it's going to snap. And I can tell the difference between a good tool now and a pretty crappy tool. So I think I'm getting the idea on what makes a good tool and what doesn't. And so I'm hoping that that means that when I start purchasing my new tools, I'll start aiming for something a little bit higher. All right, so the idea here is to try and keep this as straight as possible, I believe. I've watched a few shows or a few other channels that have talked about doing this, and so I'm just sort of trying to follow their technique. They seem to have an easier job though of putting it on there in the first place, though that feels like it's bitten a little bit. Trying to put pressure without putting too much pressure. Starting to get it. Now, I don't know whether this is going to be straight or not. I don't really care too much for the work I'm doing, but for the burner that I'm going to have to tap, it's quite thin, so I'm not really creating the same thing as I'm doing here. This is just a test to see if I can get it to work. You know, this is really soft metal, so I'm not worried too much about oiling it up. It's just very mild steel. I would imagine if this is tool steel that this would be a hell of a lot harder. Bit of movement. Now, I'm very mindful that this is fast and loose, and I'm not. A couple of mistakes I can tell I'm already making is I don't have this in a strong enough vise or like a stable enough vise. It's not at right angles, and while I think I'm doing a good job with the thread, I can feel the handles here will actually snap if I try and put too much force on it. So I'm just being very, very careful because it is quite cheap. And I don't know if you've got better tools where you can put more force on it, but I'd love you to let me know. All right, we'll see how far I can get this. Hopefully you can see that thread there. There you go. So the way this works is that's the handle, or the I don't even know what you call this, but the die goes and sits inside of that. So you'll need bigger handles for bigger dies, but the set that I've got, they'll all fit into this. And you can see these little screws that actually go in and tighten it up. And on this die, I don't know if it's the same for all of them, there's sort of two spots where it's going to firm up. And you can see that the two spots for them are here and here and here. So I'll match those up with that. Push it in. Just put them in by hand. I'm sure you could screw them in more formally. I'll just tighten up the other ones and ready to go. All right, so I'll just put this in the vise and hacksaw the end off it. So I've just got this little piece of scrap metal. I'm gonna try and put a hole just through the end there and just use it as an example. The reason I'm doing it with these scrappy pieces is, one, I don't want to damage anything, but two, I want to try it with sort of a blacksmith's finish, just to make sure that they can actually work, given stuff not being 100% square and 100% accurate. So there's our hole. It's a little bit smaller than it needs to be, which is perfect because I want to actually create the thread inside that by cutting back into the metal. All right, so you can see the square edge of that is supposed to lock into here. And I found that I'm having a little bit of trouble with making sure that it is locked in cleanly. Don't know if there's any tricks for that. But now I'm going to try to be as... That's turning. That's not good. Maybe it'll be higher on the actual piece, so I've got more of a square edge. There we are. That's better. Trying to be as square as possible. But this is all by hand. I'm sure. I think you can put these on the drill press, and you get a better result that way, because the hole that you drill is going to be the same angle as the tap. Backing off there to get rid of some of the material in the thread. And I'm trying not to go right out to the edge of the handles because again, it's just cheap. I can feel it would snap. So, novice tip. Make sure you have your work secure. Now I'm sure that snapped. I'm pretty sure that had nothing to do with oiling it up. It could have. Let me know in the comments if you think that the oil would have made the difference there. or whether this is just a just like a cheap drill bit. This is a cheap tap. It actually got far enough through that I think I can unscrew it and try to screw in the piece that I've made earlier, just to at least get the sense that we've done this project. But oh my gosh, fun. I thought the handles were gonna break, but no, the tap broke. Oh, wow, it's just crumbling. I can't really even just punch that out either, because it's going to ruin the thread. I did punch that out, but not punch it out, I just knocked it out. The thread's still there, but I don't think it's going to screw in. Screwing in, but because I didn't go all the way through, I really can't tell how well that's worked. I'm going to see if I can go and get another one. And this time, I might actually spend the money and get a decent quality tap, because the reality is this size is something that I aim to use a fair bit, because I've got a fair bit of this round stock, and I think it'd be ideal to use for a whole bunch of different things, including sort of a sort of wing nut type screw, things like that. So off to the hardware shop. Oh, hang on, that's working. Off to the hardware shop, and I'll come back and finish this later. So I'm back. I'm not going to put you through that entire thing again. I've already done back up to where I was. So I got this old knife, and by knife I mean a knife-shaped object that is done with mild steel, and you can see I've put the hole through there and threaded it as well. You can see on that angle it's got the thread. So I've got my it's not a screw, what is it? It's a piece of steel with thread on it. And I've got my hole, and ideally this is actually, there we are. It actually goes in quite well. So it doesn't go all the way through, but I haven't got enough thread on it. That's the reason why. And if I had a nut head or something that I could actually tighten that up, that'd be a hell of a lot better, because at the moment it's just sort of weakly in there, and I can undo it with my fingers, which is not ideal, but it's not going anywhere. And look, I'm not trying to be a machinist. All I'm trying to do is put some holes in things that have got thread in them. And for now, I think that is an experiment, not necessarily an experiment that went well, but as an experiment that actually got me to understand what it is I need to do and what it is I need to not do in order to put the holes and threads into the burner that I'm going to be creating, hopefully in the next video. So thank you for watching. If you enjoy the comedy that is trying to watch me do anything handy, please subscribe and continue to follow this adventure as I move my way from an absolute novice blacksmith to someone who can at the very least move a little bit of metal. I'll see you all next week.